Chapter 1. My Cruel Stepmother. The day my mother was buried, the sky did not cry. It remained painfully clear, an endless stretch of blue that felt like mockery. I remember standing beside the freshly dug grave, my fingers trembling around the edge of my black shawl, wishing the heavens would at least show some mercy. A single drop of rain would have been enough. Just one. Something to prove that the world understood what it had taken from me. But the world was silent. And so was my father. He stood beside me like a statue carved from grief. His eyes were swollen, but no tears fell. He had always been a strong man. The kind who carried heavy sacks of rice with one arm and laughed loudly at his own jokes. That day, he looked smaller, broken, as if someone had scooped out the warmth from his chest and left behind an empty shell. I was 15, old enough to understand death, too young to survive it. When the last handful of soil was thrown, something inside me was buried too. The house felt different without her. The walls echoed. The kitchen lost its fragrance. The soft humming that once drifted from room to room disappeared. I would wake up at night, convinced I had heard her footsteps, only to find the corridor cold and lifeless. Father stopped talking much after that. He would leave early for work and return late, exhaustion stitched into his face. We stopped eating together. We stopped laughing. We stopped being a family. 3 months later, he told me he was getting married again. I remember the way my spoon slipped from my hand and clattered against the plate. What? My voice barely came out. He didn't look at me. You need someone to take care of you. I can take care of myself, he sighed, rubbing his temples. You're still a child. I wanted to scream that I wasn't. That burying your mother ages you overnight. That loneliness forces you to grow up faster than time ever could. But the words stayed trapped in my throat. Her name was Shadzia. She arrived in our home, wearing a bright red dress, gold bangles, chiming like warning bells with every step. She was younger than my father, by almost 15 years. Her smile was wide, practiced, her eyes sharp. She bent down to my level on the first day. I hope we can be friends, she said sweetly. I nodded because that's what good daughters do. But something about the way her fingers gripped my chin lingered, long after she let go. It wasn't gentle. It was possessive. The change did not happen overnight. Cruelty rarely announces itself loudly. At first, it was small things. She rearranged my mother's kitchen, threw away her old utensils, replaced the curtains, changed the bed sheets. It felt like watching someone erase memories piece by piece. This house needs a fresh start, she said when I protested. A fresh start, as if my mother had been a stain that needed scrubbing. Then came the comments. Why do you always look so sad? Girls your age should smile more. No wonder your father worries. Her words were sugar-coated knives. Father didn't notice. Or maybe he chose not to. One evening, I found her wearing my mother's wedding necklace. The delicate gold chain rested against her throat like stolen sunlight. "That's my mother's," I whispered. She turned slowly, her lips curving. "And now it's mine." I felt something tear inside me. "She wanted me to have it," I said, my voice trembling. Shadzia stepped closer, her perfume suffocating. "Your mother is gone. You need to accept that." And accept that. As if grief had an expiry date. The real cruelty began after father's business started failing. Money grew tight. Tension filled the air like smoke. And suddenly, I became the easiest target. "You eat too much. You waste electricity. You're a burden." A burden. I started skipping meals. I studied under dim light to avoid complaints. I folded my clothes carefully, so she wouldn't accuse me of making a mess. Still, it was never enough. One night, I overheard her whispering to father. "She's disrespectful. She talks back. She doesn't treat me like a mother." I wanted to burst into the room and defend myself. But I stood frozen outside the door, my heart pounding so loudly, I feared they would hear it. Father's voice came, tired and strained. "She's still adjusting." "How long will that excuse last?" Shadzia snapped. Silence. The next morning, father slapped me for the first time in his life. The sound echoed in my ears long after the sting faded. "You need to behave," he said without meeting my eyes. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, but because crying had stopped bringing comfort. Days turned into months. Shazia's smile in public remained flawless. Neighbors praised her kindness. Relatives admired how well she handled me. They didn't see the way she would grip my arm. Hard enough to leave bruises when no one was watching. They didn't hear the hiss in her voice. "You think this house is yours? You're nothing here." I started talking to my mother in whispers at night. "I'm trying," I would say to the darkness. "I'm really trying." Sometimes I imagined she answered. That she wrapped her arms around me. That she told me it would get better. But mornings always came. And with them, Shazia's footsteps outside my door. One winter evening, everything changed. Father was out of town for work. The power had gone out. The house was swallowed in cold and shadows. I was sitting in my room, wrapped in a thin blanket, when Shadzia called my name. Her voice was calm. Too calm. I stepped into the hallway. She stood near the staircase, her silhouette sharp against the faint candlelight. "Come here," she said. I hesitated. I said, "Come here." My feet moved before my courage could protest. She handed me a small glass bowl. "Take this upstairs to the storage room." "What is it?" "Just oil. Don't ask questions." The storage room was rarely used. It was dusty, filled with old furniture and boxes that smelled of forgotten years. I climbed the stairs slowly, the bowl trembling in my hands. Halfway up, I heard something. A soft creak. Then a sudden shove from behind. The world tilted. The bowl slipped, and I was falling. The staircase blurred into streaks of darkness. My body hit the steps, pain exploding through me like shattered glass. When I landed at the bottom, I couldn't breathe. Through the haze, I saw her standing at the top, looking down. Not shocked, not worried, just watching. "You're so careless," she called out coldly. "Always causing trouble." My vision blurred. My last thought before everything went black was painfully simple. She pushed me. The realization did not fade with consciousness. It followed me into the darkness, wrapped around my ribs, tightened like a rope. When I opened my eyes, the world was white. White ceiling, white walls, the sharp smell of antiseptic burning my nose. A slow, mechanical beep somewhere near my head. For a moment, I thought I was dead. But then the pain came. It rose from my spine and spread through my limbs like fire. I tried to move and a gasp escaped my throat before I could stop it. "She's awake," a voice said. "Not Shazia's." A nurse leaned over me, her face soft but distant. "You had a fall," she explained gently. "You're lucky. No fractures. Just deep bruising and a mild concussion." A fall. The word felt bitter. My eyes shifted to the chair beside the bed. Father was sitting there. He looked older than I remembered. His hair messier. His hands clasped tightly together, as if he was praying without knowing it. When he saw my eyes open, he stood abruptly. "You scared me," he said, his voice rough. "Why were you running on the stairs?" Running. The lie had already been planted. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. I wasn't. He frowned slightly. "Shazia said you slipped. She tried to catch you." The room felt smaller. She pushed. "Enough." His tone wasn't angry. It was tired. "Don't start this again." This again. As if I had been weaving stories for attention. Tears finally gathered in my eyes, not because of the pain in my body, but because of the wall I could no longer climb between us. He didn't believe me. Or maybe he couldn't afford to. When we returned home 2 days later, I moved slower. Carefully. Every step reminded me of what had happened. Shazia welcomed us at the door with exaggerated concern. "Oh, my poor girl," she cooed, wrapping her arms around me. Her fingers pressed into the bruises deliberately. I stiffened. "You must be more careful," she whispered near my ear. Her breath was warm, her threat colder than ice. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I understood something terrifying. The staircase had not been an accident born from anger. It had been calculated. A warning. You are powerless. The house felt hostile after that. The walls watched. The floors felt unstable beneath my feet. I avoided being alone with her whenever possible, but it was difficult. Father was gone most of the day, and when he was home, she became an actress. Gentle voice, soft laughter, loving wife. Sometimes I wondered if I was the one losing my mind. Maybe I had imagined the shove. Maybe grief had twisted my memories. But then I would catch the way she looked at me when Father wasn't watching. And I knew. Weeks passed. The bruises faded from my skin, but not from my memory. One afternoon, I returned from school earlier than usual. My history teacher had fallen ill, so classes ended before noon. The house was quiet when I entered. Too quiet. I heard murmured voices from the living room. Shadzia was speaking. Once she's married off, everything will be easier. A male voice responded, unfamiliar and low. She's only 16. So, girls younger than her are married every day. My heart began to race. Married? I stepped closer to the doorway, careful not to make noise. She's stubborn, Shadzia continued. And expensive. Her education, her needs. My husband wastes money on her. She's his daughter, the man said. And I am his wife, she snapped. Then her tone softened again. There's a family interested. The man works abroad. He's older, yes, but stable. He'll pay well. Pay well. The words hit me harder than the staircase ever had. I wasn't a daughter. I was a transaction. My hand slipped against the wall and made a faint sound. The room fell silent. I ran before she could see me. Upstairs. Into my room. My heart pounding so violently it hurt. Marry me off. Sell me quietly under the name of tradition. The door burst open. She stood there, her expression no longer sweet. How much did you hear? Everything, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness in my voice. Her eyes narrowed. You don't get to decide my life. I whispered. She stepped forward slowly, like a predator closing in. You don't get to decide anything. I'll tell father. A small laugh escaped her lips. And say what? That I'm arranging a secure future for you. I don't want it. She grabbed my wrist. Hard. Wanting is a luxury, she hissed. One you don't have. A pain shot up my arm, but I refused to cry out. Why do you hate me? I asked, my voice breaking despite myself. For a second, something flickered in her eyes. Not guilt. Not remorse. Resentment. Because you are a reminder, she said quietly. Of what? That I will never be first in this house. The words stunned me. You think I asked for this? She continued bitterly. You think I wanted to compete with a ghost? My mother. Even in death, she threatened her. But that's not my fault, I said weakly. She released my wrist abruptly. No, but it's your existence. She left the room, slamming the door behind her. I sank onto the floor. So that was it. I wasn't hated for something I did. I was hated for who I was. That night, when father returned, I tried again. There's something I need to tell you. I began during dinner. Shadzia's fork paused mid-air. What is it? Father asked distractedly. She's trying to marry me off. I blurted. Silence. Father looked at Shadzia. She sighed softly, as if burdened. I mentioned a proposal. That's all? I thought it would secure her future. I don't want to get married, I said. You're young, Father replied. You don't understand responsibility. My chest tightened. I want to study. I want to finish school. And you will, Shadzia said smoothly. After marriage, if your husband allows. If your husband allows. Father rubbed his forehead. We're only discussing options. Options. My future reduced to a conversation over dinner. I looked at him, really looked at him. He wasn't cruel. He was weak. And weakness can be just as destructive. I'm not ready, I whispered. Shazia's eyes met mine across the table. Cold. Determined. You don't have to be, she said quietly. It's already in motion. The words did not leave the room when dinner ended. They followed me upstairs. They sat beside me on my bed. They echoed inside my skull, long after the house had fallen silent. Already in motion. I felt like a train tied to tracks I never chose, speeding toward a destination I had never seen. That night, I did not sleep. I stared at the faint crack on my ceiling, tracing it with my eyes again and again. I tried to imagine a future where I was someone's wife. Living in a stranger's house. Calling a stranger husband. Smiling when told. Speaking when allowed. The image suffocated me. I was 16. I still slept with my mother's scarf under my pillow. The next morning, Shadzia behaved as if nothing had happened. She hummed while preparing breakfast. She asked me if I wanted tea. I watched her carefully. How does someone destroy another person's life? So calmly. Father left for work without looking at me. I wanted to run after him, to grab his arm and beg him to see me. But pride is a strange thing. Even in fear, it can silence you. 2 days later, the family came. I wasn't told beforehand. Shadzia entered my room with a neatly folded outfit in her hands. A pale blue shalwar kameez I had never seen before. Wear this, she said. Why? They're downstairs. My stomach dropped. They? I whispered. The proposal. She replied flatly. Don't embarrass me. I felt the walls closing in. I said I don't want. Her palm struck my cheek so suddenly that I tasted blood. You will do as you're told. Woo for a moment. Everything inside me went quiet. No tears. No anger. Just a strange, hollow stillness. I changed into the blue outfit with shaking hands. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I didn't recognize the girl staring back. Her eyes looked older. Tired. Afraid. Shadzia adjusted my dupatta, pulling it lower over my head. Smile. She instructed. I didn't. She gripped my arm tightly and led me downstairs. They were sitting in the living room. A middle-aged woman with heavy jewelry. A thin man with sharp eyes, and beside them, him. He looked at least 35. Maybe older. His beard was neatly trimmed. His clothes expensive. His gaze calculating. He studied me the way one inspects property. I lowered my eyes, my heart pounding violently. She's shy, Shadzia said, with a soft laugh. I'm not shy. I wanted to scream. I'm terrified. The man's mother asked me a few questions. Could I cook? Did I pray regularly? Was I obedient? Obedient. Each word chipped away at me. Finally, the man spoke. Do you want to continue your studies? The question surprised me. Yes, I said quickly, hope flickering. He smiled faintly. We'll see. We'll see. The same cage, different bars. After what felt like hours, they left. I ran upstairs the second the door closed. My breathing was uneven, my chest tight. Shadzia entered a few minutes later. They liked you, she said. I don't care. You should. I won't marry him. Her expression hardened. You don't have a choice. I stood up. My hands trembling but my voice steady. I would rather die. The slap this time knocked me to the floor. She leaned down, her face inches from mine. Don't test me, she whispered. Something in her tone made my blood run cold. This wasn't just about jealousy anymore. This was control. Total and complete control. That evening, Father came home unusually early. I heard their voices raised in the living room. She's too young, he was saying. Relief rushed through me. She's 16. Shadzia replied sharply. Girls her age are already mothers. She wants to study. And what will that bring? More expenses? More attitude? Silence. She is my daughter, Father said quietly. And I am your present. Shadzia shot back. You can't live in the past forever. The words hung heavy. After a long pause, Father spoke again. Let me think. Let me think. I sank back against my bedroom door. That was not a refusal. It was hesitation. And hesitation could be manipulated. Over the next week, the house turned into a battlefield of whispers. I avoided Shadzia. She avoided subtlety. She criticized me constantly in front of Father. She talks back. She ignores me. She disrespects elders. Each accusation built a wall between us. One night, Father called me into the living room. Shadzia sat beside him, her expression composed. We've decided. He began slowly. My heart stopped. The engagement will happen next month. The wedding after you turn 17. The world tilted again. I said I don't want this. I whispered. Father's eyes looked conflicted. It's a good match. He works abroad. You'll be secure? I don't want security, I cried. I want my life. Shadzia stood up abruptly. This is your life. No, I shouted, surprising even myself. This is yours. The room fell silent. Father's face darkened. You will not raise your voice, he said firmly. Tears streamed down my face now. Please, I begged. Please don't do this. For a moment, I saw something in his eyes. Doubt, pain, love. But it flickered out too quickly. It's decided, he said. And just like that, my future was sealed. That night, I packed a small bag. Not because I had a plan, but because I knew one thing with terrifying clarity. If I stayed, I would disappear. Not physically, but slowly, piece by piece. I opened my drawer and took out my mother's scarf. Pressed it to my face. Inhaled deeply, even though her scent had long faded. I'm sorry. I whispered into the darkness. Sorry for what? I wasn't sure. For leaving. Or for not fighting harder. The house was quiet when I stepped into the hallway. I paused outside Father's door. I wanted to go in, to hug him, to tell him I loved him despite everything. But love without protection feels incomplete. And I needed to protect myself. I walked toward the staircase slowly. The same staircase. My heart pounded as I descended. Halfway down, a voice came from the shadows. Going somewhere. I froze. Shadzia stood at the bottom, watching. Her eyes dropped to the bag in my hand. You think you can run? She asked softly. I swallowed. I won't let you ruin me, I said. Her lips curved into a slow smile. You already are. Her voice slid across the darkness like a blade. For a second, I couldn't breathe. The house was silent, except for the ticking clock in the living room. Each tick sounded louder than my heartbeat. I tightened my grip on the small bag in my hand. Move, I said. Though my voice trembled, she didn't. Instead, she stepped closer, blocking the last stair completely. Where will you go? She asked softly. Who will take you in? You think the world is kinder than me? Her words crawled under my skin. I don't care, I whispered. Anywhere is better than here. She laughed, not loudly, not wildly, just a low, knowing laugh. You're naive, she said. You think pain lives only in this house. Step outside and you'll beg to come back. Maybe, I replied, my chest rising and falling rapidly. But at least it will be my choice. Well, for the first time, her expression shifted. Choice. That was the one thing she could not tolerate. Before I could react, she grabbed my arm and yanked me down the last step. The bag fell from my hand, spilling a few clothes onto the floor. You ungrateful girl, she hissed. After everything we've done for you. Done for me? I choked. You pushed me down the stairs. Her grip tightened painfully. Careful. Why are you afraid of me? I demanded suddenly. The question surprised both of us. She blinked. You act like I'm your enemy? I continued, tears blurring my vision. I never tried to take anything from you. You took him. She snapped. I was born before you came. And that's exactly the problem. She shouted, her composure cracking. He looks at you and sees her. He talks to you and remembers her. I live in the shadow of a dead woman. Her voice echoed against the walls. For a moment, I saw it clearly. She wasn't just cruel. She was insecure. Broken in her own way. But broken people can still destroy others. That's not my fault, I said quietly. No, she replied, her tone dropping again. But it's your burden. She shoved me backward. I stumbled but didn't fall. Footsteps thundered from upstairs. Father appeared at the top of the staircase, his face confused and alarmed. What's going on? Shazia's tears came instantly. She's running away, she sobbed. After everything. She says she hates us. I stared at her in disbelief. I never said that. Father descended quickly. His eyes landed on the bag, the clothes scattered on the floor. Is this true? He asked me. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I can't stay here, I finally said. His face hardened in a way I had never seen before. So you choose strangers over your own family? A family. The word felt foreign. She's unhappy, Shadzia whispered, clinging to his arm. Maybe she thinks we're monsters. I looked at him desperately. Please just listen to me. I am listening, he shouted. The sound of his raised voice hit me harder than any slap. I feel trapped, I said, my voice shaking. I don't want this marriage. I don't feel safe here. The last sentence slipped out before I could stop it. Silence fell. Father's eyes narrowed slightly. What do you mean by that? Shadzia's fingers tightened around his sleeve. Nothing, she said quickly. She's being dramatic. I'm not, I cried. Father looked between us, conflict written all over his face. Did something happen? He asked slowly. This was it, the moment. The edge of truth. Yes, I whispered. Shazia's gaze burned into me. My heart pounded violently. If I spoke, everything would change. There would be no going back. The word caught in my throat. Father's eyes searched mine. And then I saw it. Fear. Not fear of me. Fear of what the truth would demand from him. If he believed me, he would have to choose. And I wasn't sure he was strong enough for that. The silence stretched too long. Finally, I lowered my gaze. I just don't want to get married, I said weakly. Something inside me shattered. Father exhaled heavily. You can't run from responsibility. I'm a child. You're not. Shadzia interrupted sharply. Stop acting like one. A father picked up the bag and placed it firmly in my hands. You're not leaving, he said. Not like this. My fingers felt numb. Go to your room, he added. The finality in his voice left no space for argument. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. Halfway up, I glanced back. Shadzia was watching me. Her expression was victorious. That night, my door was locked from the outside. I realized it when I tried to open it, and the handle wouldn't turn. My chest tightened. Let me out, I shouted, banging on the door. No response. I sank to the floor, panic rising like floodwater. Locked. In my own room. Hours passed. I cried until my throat burned. Until my tears dried. Until exhaustion replaced hysteria. Somewhere in the darkness, I understood something terrifying. They weren't just forcing a marriage. They were breaking my will. And slowly, it was working. The next morning, the door was unlocked as if nothing had happened. Breakfast was waiting on the table. Shadzia smiled at me. Good morning. I didn't answer. Days blurred together after that. I stopped arguing. Stopped protesting. Stopped speaking unless spoken to. It was easier. Resistance required energy I no longer had. The engagement date was announced to relatives. Congratulations poured in. I felt like I was attending my own funeral. One afternoon, while cleaning the living room, I overheard Father on the phone. Yes, he was saying, the dowry arrangements will be modest. We can't afford much. Dowry. The word sliced through me. I wasn't just being married off. I was being negotiated. That evening, something inside me shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a quiet, cold decision forming in the depths of my chest. If no one was going to save me, I would save myself, even if it meant losing everything. Including him. Including the only parent I had left. That night, I didn't pack a bag. I waited. Listened to the house breathe. Waited for the perfect silence. And when it came, I opened the window. The night air rushed in, cold and sharp against my tear-stained face. For a moment, I simply stood there, gripping the frame, staring at the darkness outside. It looked endless. Free. Terrifying. The ground below wasn't too far. My room was on the first floor. If I lowered myself carefully, I could drop without breaking anything. My hands trembled as I climbed onto the ledge. I paused. My eyes moved across the room one last time. The bed where I had cried myself to sleep for months. The cracked ceiling I had memorized. The door that had been locked from the outside. This had once been my home. Now it felt like a cage. "I'm sorry, Abu," I whispered into the quiet. Then, I swung my legs over. For a second, I hung there, fingers clinging to the edge. And then, I let go. The fall was shorter than I expected. My feet hit the ground hard, pain shooting up my ankles, but I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I ran, barefoot, into the street. The world outside was asleep. Streetlights flickered weakly. Dogs barked in the distance. My heart pounded so loudly, I feared it would wake the entire neighborhood. But no one came out. No one stopped me. I kept running until my lungs burned and my legs begged for mercy. Only then did I slow down. I had nowhere to go. No money, no plan. Just fear and a fragile determination. I walked toward the main road, hugging my arms around myself. The night felt colder now. The reality heavier. What if Shadzia was right? What if the world was worse? A car's headlights appeared in the distance. I stepped back instinctively, hiding near a closed shop. The vehicle passed without slowing. I exhaled shakily. I couldn't wander forever. Then, I remembered someone. My mother's older sister. Kala lived in another part of the city. We hadn't visited much after my mother died. Shadzia had slowly cut off contact with most relatives, saying it was unnecessary drama. But I remembered the way Kala used to hug me. The way she would stroke my hair and say I looked exactly like my mother. It wasn't much, but it was hope. The bus stop was a 15-minute walk from where I stood. I reached it just as the first early morning bus arrived. The driver looked at me suspiciously. "Where are your parents?" "Waiting ahead," I lied, my voice barely steady. He shrugged and allowed me in. I sat near the window, my heart racing the entire journey. Every time the bus slowed, I expected father to appear. Or worse, Shadzia. But they didn't. The sky began to lighten as we approached Kala's neighborhood. When I stepped off the bus, my legs felt weak. I stood outside her house for several minutes, staring at the familiar gate. What if she turned me away? What if she called Father immediately? I knocked anyway. The sound echoed in the quiet morning. Footsteps approached. The door opened. Kala stood there in a simple cotton shawl, her hair slightly messy from sleep. She stared at me. For a second, she didn't recognize what she was seeing. Then her eyes widened. My God. The bag wasn't with me. My feet were bare. My face swollen from crying. Bada, she whispered. And that was all it took. I broke down completely. She pulled me into her arms without asking questions. I sobbed into her shoulder like a child who had finally found shelter after a storm. She didn't push me away. She didn't scold. She simply held me. Hours later, after tea and warm clothes and trembling explanations, she sat silently for a long time. He tried to marry you off? She asked finally. I nodded. And your stepmother? I didn't need to explain further. Kala's jaw tightened. You're staying here, she said firmly. The words felt unreal. Won't you tell him? I asked quietly. She sighed. He will call, and I will answer. A fear crawled up my spine, but she squeezed my hand. You're not going back? For the first time in months, I believed someone. By afternoon, Father arrived. His eyes were wild with worry. When he saw me sitting beside Kala, relief flooded his face so intensely that guilt stabbed through me. He rushed forward. Are you crazy? He demanded, voice shaking. Do you know what you've done? I looked at him. Really looked. He looked tired, scared, but also angry. I couldn't stay, I said softly. You humiliated us, he snapped. Kala stood up immediately. Enough. He turned to her. This is a family matter. And she is my sister's daughter. Kala replied sharply. Which makes it my matter too. Silence. She ran away in the middle of the night. Father continued. What would people say? What people say? Kala's voice rose. She's 16. You're forcing her into marriage. It's for her future. No, she said firmly. It's for your convenience. The words struck him like a slap. She doesn't feel safe in that house. Kala added. Father's eyes flickered toward me. Why? He asked slowly. My throat tightened. This time, I didn't look away. Because she pushed me down the stairs, I said. The room froze. Kala gasped softly. Father's face drained of color. That's not true, he whispered. It is. My voice didn't shake this time. She locked my door. She hit me. She called me a burden. Each sentence felt like ripping open a wound. Father staggered back slightly, as if physically struck. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. I tried. Silence swallowed the room. For the first time, I saw it clearly. Not just his weakness, but his regret. Tears filled his eyes. I thought you were just angry, he said brokenly. I was scared, I replied. That seemed to destroy him. He sank into a chair, covering his face with his hands. For a long time, no one spoke. Finally, he looked up. She told me you hated her, he said, quietly. I don't hate her, I whispered. I just wanted you to see me. The simplicity of that truth hung heavy between us. Kala crossed her arms. The marriage is cancelled. Father nodded slowly. Yes, he said. And somehow, I believed him. Days turned into weeks. I stayed with Kala while Father dealt with the consequences at home. The engagement was quietly called off. Whispers spread. Shadzia left soon after. I don't know whether it was shame or anger that drove her away. Perhaps both. Father visited often. At first, our conversations were awkward. Fragile. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. But he listened now. Truly listened. He apologized. Not once, but many times. And though the scars inside me remained, they no longer felt invisible. Months later, I returned home. The house felt different. Quieter. Lighter. Mother's old utensils were back in the kitchen. Her wedding necklace rested in a small velvet box on my dresser. Father placed it in my hands. She wanted you to have it, he said. I closed my fingers around it. For the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a place healing from a storm. And so was I. The pain of those months would never fully disappear. But neither would the lesson. Cruelty can break you. Silence can trap you. But the moment you choose yourself, even with trembling hands, you begin to survive.